Today we're going to be combining a couple skills that we learned this year. One is multiplying and dividing a decimal by 10, but we're going to also up that by talking about powers of 10. 10 to the first power, 10 to the second power, 10 to the third power, and what happens if you multiply a number by those powers, what happens to the decimal, okay? So just kind of simple, like let's go back and just be a little bit simple. So remember that when you take a number with a decimal and you multiply it by 10, okay, it gets one place value bigger, okay? So that means that everything goes up one place, it gets one place value bigger, becomes 34. If you take 3.4 and you divide by 10, okay, which is the same thing as finding 1/10 of 34, okay, so the word divided by 10 is the same as finding 1/10, all right, and again, if you're watching this video and you're like, what did she say? Remember, you can pause and rewind and go back and see what I'm talking about, okay? So, that's easy. So if you have 3.4 and you're dividing it by 10, which is the same as finding 1/10 of 3.4, then you're going to move it down one place, smaller. So both numbers are going to move down one place on the number line. Okay. That, hopefully, we got from a little while back. Now we're going to do some more, okay? There's some tricks that we can do, though, to make this easier. So let's say we look at something like 3.4, and now we want to multiply it by a power of 10. Let's say 10 to the second, okay? Now, we're like, oh my gosh, powers of 10. What on earth does 10 to the second mean? So we may have to review our powers of 10. So 10 to the second means that you've multiplied 10 times 10. It is not 10 times 2, it is 10 times 10. 10 times 10 is 100. One trick that we talked about a while ago is 10 to the second is a 1 with 2 zeros, okay? So 3.4 times 10 to the second is the same thing as 3.4 times 100. Well, gee, if I multiply it by 10, it goes up one place. I multiply it by 100, well, actually, it's going to go up one place for every zero. So there's 2 zeros here, so actually your 3.4 is going to go up 2 places. So you go 3.4, and it would go up, whoops, I didn't have to write the points there. It would go up not just one place, so not just to here, but it would go up to here, the 3 would go up to there, and you'd fill in your empty space with a placeholder. It'd be 340. All right. So there are some shortcuts to this. Dividing would be the exact opposite. So if you were dividing 3.4 divided by 10 to the second, that would be the same thing as saying 3.4 divided by 100. So if you started with 3.4 here, and you're dividing by 100, it's going to get 2 place values smaller. So every number is going to go not just one place, but 2 places down. And remember, the numbers move together. So you're going to end up with 34 thousandths, which means we need a placeholder here. Oops. Okay. Now, there is a little trick, okay? You might have noticed that there are 2 zeros in each of these. And in each of these, if you look at where the decimal started and where the decimal ended, you could actually find the answer to these problems by moving the decimal 2 places. So we move the decimal to the opposite direction that the number goes. So if we're dividing and we have 2 zeros, we're going to move the decimal 1, 2 places to the left, and we're going to put a 0 in as a placeholder. Hey, look it, there's my answer. Decimal moves from here to here, 34 hundredths. Isn't that so much easier than moving it on a place value chart? And we're going to come up here, and hey, 2 zeros. My decimal, now multiplication is the opposite of division, so the decimal is going to move to the right 2 places. The decimal is now going to go, I got to get that multiplication sign out of the way. decimal is now going to go here, and in this empty space, that's why I make the loops, so that I know if there's an empty space. In this empty space goes a placeholder, and it becomes 340. Ooh, there's shortcuts, okay? So basically, every time you multiply, so if you multiply by powers of 10, and powers of 10 are 10, 100, 1,000, 10,000, those are all powers of 10. So remember, 10 is 10 to the first, a 1 with 1 0. 100 is 10 to the second, a 1 with 2 zeros. 1,000 is 10 to the third, a 1 with 3 zeros. And 10,000 is 10 to the fourth, a 1 with 1, 2, 3, 4 zeros after it. Okay? Those are our powers of 10. That's our shortcut for figuring those out from way, way back when. So let's say there's a rule. So for every 0, you're going to move the decimal. So when you multiply, I'm trying to figure out where I can write this. So when you multiply, for every 0, you move the decimal 1 place to the right. Okay? When you divide, for every 0, move 1 place to the left. Did I get that right? Yeah. Okay. So we have that there. Let's take a look at an example. Let's take something like, I already had 3. Let's go 1 and 25 hundredths, okay? We're going to divide. That 5 looks really bad in the camera. Does that look better? Yeah, it looks better. Okay. So 1 and 25 hundredths. Let's multiply 1 and 25 hundredths times 10 to the first. Okay. This is going to be easy because 10 to the first is just 10. So what we're going to do is we're multiplying it by 1 0. So we're going to move our decimal 1 place to the right. And it's going to go from there to there. So my answer is going to be 1 and 12 and 5 tenths. Okay, decimal goes from there to there. All right, let's move on our way up. 1 and 25 hundredths times 10 to the second. That would be 2 zeros. So I'm going to move my decimal 2 places to there. So my answer is going to be 125. Hopefully we're seeing a pattern here. If I do 1 and 25 hundredths times 10 to the third, that's 3, whoops, it looks like 103. That's 3 zeros, it's 1,000. So I'm going to move my decimal place 3 places, 1, 2, 3, to the right. And my answer is going to be 1,250. And notice that I'm looping. And when I got here and I was looping, there's this empty loop. So I put a placeholder in it. So that's where my 0 comes in. And that pattern would keep continuing. Of course, what we didn't talk about was 1 and 25 hundredths times 10 to the 0 power. Well, 10 to the 0 is a 1 with no zeros. So 10 to the 0 equals 1. And when you multiply something by 1, it stays the same. It does not change. So for every 0, when you multiply, for every 0 you multiply by, you're moving your decimal to the right that many places. Which means since division is the opposite, you're going to do the same thing, but you're going to move the decimal in the opposite direction. So really quick, if we 10 to the 0, okay, so if we have 4.37, let's go 24.37. divided by 10 to the 0. That's the same thing as dividing by 1, so it's going to stay the same. Okay? If we take 24.37 and we divide it by 10 to the first, my decimal is going to move one place to the left, and it's going to become 2.437, or 2 and 437 thousandths. If I take 24 and 37 hundredths and I divide it by 10 to the second, that means I have 2 zeros. My decimal is going to move 2 places in this direction. So my answer is going to be 2,437 10,000ths, which is actually smaller than all these other numbers. And then it keeps going. 24 and 37 hundredths divided by 10 to the third. We have 3 zeros. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, move it 3 places. I need to put a placeholder in that empty place. And my answer is going to be 0.024337, which is actually 2,437 hundred thousandths, which would be super, super tiny. Okay? So these are the patterns that you'll find when you're multiplying by powers of 10.